AI video tools like Google Veo promise something awesome. Lifelike cinematic quality produced instantly from text to video. Now, in this video, we're going to be assessing if it's worth the hype. We're going to showcase an actual video example used for patient education. We're also going to leave some of the clips that didn't necessarily make the cut in the end. Things that were a little awkward or medically inaccurate to showcase some of the pitfalls of the software when you just blindly choose clips without actually refining your prompts or editing the visuals. We're also going to discuss how it compared to a list of other software that's commonly used with AI and showcase why it worked and why it didn't. First, let's jump into the process. When it comes to this type of video, we always want to start with the learning objective and outcome. For patient education, this is very easy. We want reduced anxiety and higher compliance. For the specific video on orthopedic bruising after surgery, this is kind of simple because it was more of an informational session to reassure the patient that they shouldn't be worried too much. Let's check out the original video that we produced using custom motion graphics first, and this is something that was actually used in a patient education software.
Bruising will vary quite a bit from person to person. Some people will have minimal to no bruising, and others will have a lot, especially if they've been on blood thinners. Bruising may take up to 1 to 2 weeks to develop. Shoulder version. It has a tendency to follow gravity and extend down to the chest, arm, and elbow. It may even extend all the way down into the forearm and...
Now, let's showcase the actual Google Veo video clip, and this is just going to be 30 seconds of it, just so you have something to compare it to.
Bruising will vary quite a bit from person to person. Some people will have minimal to no bruising and others will have a lot, especially if they have been on blood thinners. Bruising may take up to 1 to 2 weeks to develop. Shoulder version. It has a tendency to follow gravity and extend down to the chest, arm, and elbow. It may extend all the way down into the forearm and hand.
Great. Creating this video is actually kind of easy. The first thing you want to do is start with learning objectives. When it comes to patient education, this is kind of an easy process because typically you're building learning objectives centered around calming anxiety for patients, making sure that they have an understanding and some sort of confidence when it comes to the actual content, and that they are reassured in terms of the procedure and what they should be feeling throughout the process. You also want to create content that boosts compliance. For this specific video, it's definitely going to be focused on that anxiety side of the equation. It's an informational video, and the first you want to do is define the learning objective. Now, this isn't like traditional corporate training where you're using specific nomenclature on what to do, right? We want to make this as accessible as possible, and defining the outcome is the first key step. The next step is processing the script. You can do this the old-fashioned way with a copywriter or an instructional designer, or you can take your brochure, load it into ChatGPT, ask it a decent prompt, and then produce a few different iterations of it. This is actually one of the key processes we've been following for patient education. We've been having them reviewed by clinicians as well as patients, and it has produced phenomenal results. After you've defined the learning objectives, you produced your scripts, now you want to define the visual style. Google Veo and Sora or other tools like this have multiple styles. I think Google Veo shines when it comes to the realism, right? The lifelike visuals. Just think of how complicated it would be to film a bruising scenario with actual patients. I don't even think that's possible. Or actors in makeup, which probably wouldn't be that accurate. So the next step after you have your script is defining the style. And in this specific example, we wanted a lifelike, realistic example to showcase to have that clinical accuracy. So the scripting is the next step. And what's great about this is it strolls right into the follow-up sequence of storyboarding. Storyboarding is where you align the planned narrated content with the visual content. This requires a lot of conceptualization of scenes, and there's a few approaches on how you can do this. You can provide visual descriptions of every scene, and again, this is something ChatGPT or some sort of AI software can provide for you. Of course, make sure you vet it, make sure it's solid and aligned with your guys' expectations. Or you can even ask it to produce simple mock-ups just so you can get a quick review. In the past, what we used to do was we would write the scripts, sketch a quick mock-up of the scene, show it to clinicians to make sure it's something that we should invest time in producing, and then create the assets and then animate according to audio. What's nice about these AI tools and technology is you can produce the script almost instantly, edit it and refine it. You can create storyboard visuals that are the actual scenes that you might use. And then lastly, you can animate them according to audio. For Google Veo, this was kind of an interesting process because we're using clips of actual scenarios. So the process was somewhat efficient. Step 4 is about storyboarding the flow. In the past, what we used to do is we would script the content, define the style using a design board. We would storyboard everything, which would require us to do really quick sketches. That way we can present it to clinicians and get feedback on the clinical accuracy and the subject matter. But with that being said, that's no longer a thing, right? We can skip that step. We can actually produce very quick storyboard visuals or descriptions using ChatGPT or some sort of AI software. Of course, you want to make sure that they're accurate, but you can almost instantly go from a script to a storyboard visual description, and you can even ask it to produce a quick mock-up of a scene before you even produce a video. So you script it, you storyboard it by defining which actual scenes that you need, and the next step is creating the assets. This is where Google Veo shines. You're essentially going to be taking your prompt and your storyboard description and loading them into Google Veo. The process is kind of simple once you actually have an account. Now, the problem with this is it does take some time for iteration and editing. For example, we were able to produce some very medically accurate video clips of bruising. And just think, how difficult would this be to actually do with an actor or makeup or even a patient? It's just not possible or convenient. Now with Google Veo, you can actually get lifelike visuals of bruising. Now, they're not all perfect. I'm sure in that example, you saw some weird, gross clips of what appeared to be more of an infection. But overall, with some prompting and iterations and optimization, you can produce something that's actually usable with assets. Now, the next step is going to be creating each of the assets. With Google Veo, you're essentially getting 8-second clips. The process is fairly straightforward. You're going to take your visual description from the storyboard. If you have a Google Veo account, it's a seamless process because all you have to do is take the description, load it into this prompt area, and they will produce you within a few minutes something that's actually quite usable. Now, the challenge is it's not always going to be accurate. In the video that we produced, we had some really good examples of bruising and some not so good examples of bruising that had more of like an infection or even a cut. We could have taken those out, reprompted, produced something that was very accurate for the entire series, but I thought it was worth including them because I want you to see the bad and the ugly side of Google Veo. Not everything's accurate, but once you've produced all of these clips, then it comes down to editing them, stitching them together, and making sure that you have something that can fill the specific scene gaps that you have within your storyboard. The last step in the process is editing and assembling. You've produced your clips, all of them are going to be usable. You've taken out the bad ones, and of course, I apologize we didn't, but I wanted to showcase the bad stuff of the bad results of Google Veo. And you stitch them together and you start to add supplemental text, iconography, any animated graphics that necessarily make the video better. And from here, you have a complete video module. Now, when compared to motion graphics videos, this process was fairly efficient. Yes, you're going to have to reprompt sometimes. Yes, there's still going to be some editing involved in storyboarding, but you are now getting lifelike visuals produced instantaneously as opposed to creating everything scene by scene. When we showcase Google Veo in front of 100 clinicians and professionals in the patient education space, it actually ranked third in terms of a top favorite software. People liked the fact that it was accessible, that it showed lifelike visuals, and they were curious because sometimes animated visuals don't necessarily reflect the tone that you want. With that being said, it all comes down to the script that you develop, the visual descriptions, and your patience for prompting. Google Veo, it's only getting better, and the cinematic quality is almost there. Unfortunately, the 8-second clips make it a little bit difficult to actually produce things of substance or value, but with some editing and assembling, you can actually have a video that works for patients, resonates with an audience, and provides the clinical details that you need to improve compliance and reduce anxiety. Tools like Google Veo cannot replace learning design. You're always going to have to define learning objectives and outcomes, script content, create storyboards, provide feedback, evaluate. But with that being said, this certainly does streamline the process. We have a ton of examples on our YouTube channel, the Microlearning Lab. I strongly recommend subscribing. Check out some of the examples in the playlist specifically for patient education. And let me know if you guys have any questions. My contact information or the website will be listed in the comments below. Thank you.